Uh, Tim, so I've been randomly in like lots of conversations this week, and we can get to Rule and all this kind of stuff and whatever here in a minute. But for some reason, several people this week have started asking me and talking to me about Trey Taylor. I don't know if it's because he's been active on Twitter through this whole Rule thing or whatever, but a lot of people have asked me like, "Hey, what do you think of this guy? What do you think of him as an actual quarterback and a prospect?" I know you have strong Trey Taylor feelings, so I thought I would just go to the talent eval guy himself. When people ask you what we should think about Trey Taylor as a future Nebraska quarterback, what do you tell them?
Yeah, so I think his junior year so far has been very informative as to what Nebraska's getting and what he can be down the line. I mean, the big question for him going into this year was, can he win games? Last year they went 3-6. They didn't win enough, and that's like ultimately the only reason he isn't a 5 star was there wasn't enough wins. He hadn't led his team to enough wins, and so now he's done it in multiple instances, gone back and forth. It was a loss, but went back and forth in a nationally spotlighted game against Israel Abrams, another top quarterback in the 2027 cycle. He's done a lot of just kind of putting the team on his back, leading his team down the field to victory. Um, and then the other part of this has been this year is he's really started to use his legs a lot more and kind of found himself being more of a weapon. I think something I was surprised at the first time I turned on his sophomore tape was how sudden he was and how little he was actually using that suddenness just as a mover. And you're starting to see that more now. You're starting to see him really just take advantage of the open space he has. And so when you're looking at him, I think at the baseline, you're looking at a guy that is one of the more consistent throwers in the class in terms of velocity he gets at all three levels of the field, the touch he throws with. This year, his deep ball accuracy has really come together. That was something that he had in his bag, but it's really been harnessed this year in terms of the consistent accuracy. Game to game, you're starting to see that a little more. He's pretty safe with the football, intuitive. He's as a junior, he is essentially running his own offense. His dad's his offensive coordinator. But if he's in the flow of the game, I mean, his dad essentially like he just lets him kind of call the plays, and because he knows what he's seeing out there, he trusts what his son's kind of seeing out there. So you're talking about a guy that's calling his own offenses. And it's not just again a high school offense. He's installed concepts from Dana Holgerson's offense in his own in order to prep himself for Nebraska. You're talking about a guy that at all three levels of the field is delivering with timing and consistency and consistent velocity. Again, the velocity he gets on the ball was something that when we were at Rivals 5 Star, was like, okay, none of these other guys are getting it as consistently as Trey is. Like, it's not coming off the ball for like Colton Nussmeyer and any of these like national type 27, 26 quarterbacks, Teddy Gerard, any of them, because it's not coming off their hand the way it's coming off of Trey's consistently. And so it's accuracy and velocity are the two best things he does as a thrower of the football. And then his ability as a dual threat guy and his ability to kind of extend plays. And his mental makeup are why you kind of bet on him long term. I've said this for a bit, and again, it's not a bad thing at all. I think everyone in the building understands their role and understands the quarterback they currently have and how talented he is. You're going to see this offense as long as Dana Holgerson is here. You're going to see this offense evolve and shift once the reins are turned over to TJ Lateef and then eventually Trey Taylor. Like those two are more dual threat. They fit more of a dual threat type scheme. I think there's going to be a little more that Nebraska can do in the QB run game when it's time for those two to play. But right now, I mean, obviously, like again, everyone understands that Dylan is the most talented of the three at this very moment. Down the line, that could change. I think Trey, his ceiling long term is arguably higher than Dylan's only because when you look at that frame and what that could eventually look like. He's 6'3" right now on the north side of 200, but doesn't look it. Like he's skinnier than me, you know what I mean? Like or like off the hoof at least. Um but that's a guy that is going to be like 230, like can potentially put up to 225, 230 pounds once he's truly in like a true strength and conditioning program and is able to kind of just add mass to his frame. That's going to be the biggest question is long term. Like Jaden Daniels, can he put on the mass to his frame that can allow him to play at a high level? Jaden Daniels has been the comp for a while. I don't necessarily agree because I think Trey's a better throw of the football and a more like a better quarterback at this point in his development. But there's a lot of similarities there. Just bigger frame quarterbacks that are slighter from a build standpoint, but are pretty dynamic as a thrower and a runner. But their best stuff is kind of in the pocket.
I mean, his skill on the field is pretty evident, and we can see that. But what about his skill on the recruiting trail? I mean, to have your 27 quarterback in the fold already, and for him to be as locked in with Nebraska as he is, as with this whole Rhule drama going on, him saying he's locked in, recruits, whether you're looking at Nebraska, where you're committed to Nebraska, like this is the place to be, come talk to me. Like, how important is it, and how great has it been for Nebraska to have a guy like an ambassador like Trey Taylor with not only the skill but the way that he's able to talk to people and get people to love Nebraska potentially.
Yeah, it's super rare because whenever anyone gets these early, I mean, you look at around who else has 2027 quarterbacks committed early on. It's Ohio State and Notre Dame and like I mean, like it's the programs that have won things and have accomplishments and have a pedigree and all of that, and it's programs where quarterbacks are racing to claim their spot. And this cycle that did happen in 27, where it was like kind of just like Nebraska was like, okay, well, we like Trey and we'll see if anyone else pops up, but Trey's going to be our guy, and they were able to get Trey committed. And so now, yeah, like he has been relentless. I've never seen across any of my stops. Like at Michigan, at JJ was a pretty vocal peer recruiter from what I had heard, but I don't think it was to this extent at Michigan. At A&M, there were guys that were peer recruiters and did their job to reach out and try and help others to commit. It was never to this extent, like what Trey's doing and the communication he's doing, the kind of he's going above and beyond, just in the sense that, like, I mean, he's in touch with Ahmad Hudson like once a week. Those two just kind of hang, they play video games together or whatever. Like, but he's in touch, just kind of keeping Nebraska in Ahmad's ear. He's constantly in touch with Mark Matthews. Like he told me in the summer when he was going down to the battle when he was going down to the OT7 championships, which were in Miami this year, in South Florida this year. While he was down there, he tried to make it out to go see Mark Matthews, to go spend some time around Mark Matthews, who those two have never been around each other in person, but wanted to spend some time and peer recruit him. Mark just happened to be at Future 50 that weekend in Orlando, so that wasn't able to work out. But like every time when he's at 7-on-7 tournaments this offseason, every time he's at places, he's thinking about how can I peer recruit for Nebraska, and that's rare. That's really rare. And it's why Nebraska has a shot at putting together a top 5 class, because guys want to play with this kid. He is that kind of personality, and on field this year, I think that's been the big part of it. On field this year, there's no denying that, like, okay, well, this is a guy, like this is one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Certainly one of the top 5 in the country, has a chance to push for top 3 through this offseason. I think his talent level, and I think the vocal peer recruiting that he's doing is so big for Nebraska. It's why they're going to have a shot at Ahmad Hudson, why they're going to have a shot at potentially Albert Simeon, Kennedy Brown, and Mark Matthews, and some of these top receivers in the country. It's the staff is doing an excellent job of setting the table and getting Nebraska in these guys' ears, but it's Trey that's doing a lot of this work that's keeping Nebraska in these recruitments. And ultimately, I think the momentum that he started is going to be a key reason why Nebraska is going to have a chance for those guys.
Tim, as we kind of talk about the Rhule drama, have you seen or talked to any of the recruits, either that are currently committed or that Nebraska has been talking to or targeting, whether in 26 or 27? Have you talked to any of them that were concerned about this, or how are they processing this whole situation? I know Nebraska became very active, offering a few Penn State decommits during this week as well. Like, how is this week's news kind of sat with the to both targets and committed players?
So I think initially there was some, obviously just some, like, well, what's going on? And it didn't really help that it got as big as it did. Like post hiring, it was clearly like, everyone was running with the Rhule to top candidate. And so it got a little out there before, the staff really had an opportunity to address it with everybody. But once, everyone kind of had everyone kind of understands what the deal is. I mean, the players have an understanding that he's sticking around. The recruits have an understanding that Rhule's sticking around, that it's business as usual. And again, at this point, at the same time, though, Nebraska has no incentive to say anything else, and so, at least through this week, it's been, hey, nothing's changing. Like we're here, and he straight up just said, whether it's him or a staff member, it's been the message has been like he's going to be your coach next year. So it's I don't think there's a whole lot of actual concern, and I think a lot of these guys are staying patient with how this is going to play out. I mean, again, like Trae was the one that was like, I'm going to keep an eye on how this goes, only because he said multiple times he's at Nebraska as long as Matt Rhule and Dana Holgorsen are at Nebraska. He's a big fan of those two guys, wants to play for those two guys. Glenn Thomas as well wants to play for those guys, but he's had other schools reaching out. That's why part of the reason why he wanted to shut things down was, he just wanted to tell other schools that and tell other recruits that, hey, nothing's changing at Nebraska. Kind of being that vocal, like the piece of vocal support, just like Dylan was. But also slow down his recruitment a little bit too, and it's not going to stop schools from trying. I mean, if the school still wants an opportunity, they're going to still keep reaching out, but kind of slow down some of the communication and let schools know that, hey, like there's nothing here. Like you're not going to have a chance at flipping him. So that was the one that early on this week was like just a little interesting. But again, I figured as soon as he had a conversation with the staff, things would get smoothed over. But yeah, that's where we're at. I don't think anyone's super concerned about it. And again, I think as we've seen this week play out, it just kind of, it doesn't feel like this they're not operating like a staff that's on the move. Like I've seen people, freaking out about the Penn State offers, acting like this is something that Rhule and the staff are doing to set themselves up for the next move. That's not what's happening here. Nebraska and other programs smell blood in the water in the Northeast right now. The Penn State under James Franklin dominated that area and recruit. Like if they wanted a guy, there were guys that they were just going to like no one really had a chance to come on spell until Penn State started to struggle a little bit this year. Messiah Mickens, their four-star running back this cycle. A lot of those guys up there are Penn State guys that have continued to stick with Penn State, their Penn State commitment despite reopening things, because they want to give whoever that next staff is a chance. They want to play at Penn State. But there is a vacuum right now because James Franklin is not there. There's currently a vacuum that Notre Dame is racing to fill, that Ohio State is racing to fill, that Nebraska is racing to fill, that Syracuse is racing to fill. A bunch of these schools are racing to fill. There's a power vacuum right now in the Northeast, and Nebraska's doing their due diligence because they have needs along the defensive line. Penn State has a few defensive line guys that, and they obviously made a Wisconsin D-line offer as well. But there's guys at Penn State that they'd like an opportunity to get a shot at that they didn't have a chance at the first time around because it was just a foregone conclusion. Those guys were Penn State bound.
Tim, as you look at the game tonight against Minnesota, obviously I think Nebraska is more talented than Minnesota. I think they've got some advantages here. Is there a certain part of this matchup that you like particularly the most for Nebraska, or is there a place that you feel a little bit concerned?
I think the one that I was surprised by just getting into the stats and watching both teams was the special teams of it all. Like how like, that's been a unit where, at least with Minnesota, I feel like it's not been something where I've been like, oh, they're bad or they're an issue. But like this feels like a year where like, okay, well, Nebraska's significantly better in this department than Minnesota is. And I also think just again, like this, the Washington Minnesota team just doesn't feel like the PJ Fleck teams of old, and like I went back and, like 2 years ago when the last time Nebraska was there, when the last time Nebraska played them, yeah, they weren't running the ball like they have in years past, but I don't know. I just got a weird vibe on this team. Like this feels like the first year in a while that Nebraska is the more talented team and the deeper team and the more complete team. And for all those reasons, I think Nebraska should be able to win this game, but Nebraska Minnesota games are always weird. This kind of turns into Iowa a little bit, where Minnesota is kind of that team that waits for you to make mistakes, and Nebraska kind of has to avoid those. But if I like my prediction or my feel on this is if Nebraska's offense gets off to the start that they have in years past, and they're able to move the ball consistently, I think this Minnesota offense is going to have a tough time keeping up. This Minnesota team is going to have a tough time keeping up. And if you race to an early lead and you force them to throw, you have an opportunity to kind of sit on a nice early lead. If you allow them to establish the run, that's when you get into some trouble.
Go ahead.
Well, we talked about yesterday. I think we talked about the station, not completely stationary, but stationary target that is Minnesota's quarterback in Drake Lindsey, and how Nebraska has faced pretty much pretty athletic quarterbacks from week 1 all the way until last week. What is going to be the difference that you're expecting to see with the defense from John Butler, what he cooks up to get after Drake Lindsey and this Minnesota team that, like you were saying, it's not like a typical PJ Fleck team that likes to run the ball. They haven't been very good at it this year. That is looking to pass the ball more often than not, and a quarterback who's not really going to get out of the pocket and gash you for any big runs like Bryce Underwood or Malik Washington did.
Yeah, I'm super curious to see how Nebraska, I think, matches up in the back end first, just to see how much Butler trusts his DBs against these receivers. On paper, I think I think there should be some trust, but I also think there's a I would understand having a healthy respect for this wide receiver unit and understanding that they may not have played their best football just yet. But at the same time, I'm curious to see if Butler just kind of allows his guys to just live on islands and trust those guys to play and then dial stuff up front, or that he looks at what Deshaun McCullough's done over the last 2 weeks, and specifically what Williams Neri's done the last 2 weeks, and says, okay, well, let's see if we can get home with 4. I think I'd like to see more of that from Nebraska down the stretch of the season. But I think Friday is a good opportunity to see, okay, can Nebraska get home with 4 or 5? Are they able to kind of just silence things up in the back, or kind of eliminate open windows in the back end, potentially get home with 4 and just make life tough for him. I'm expecting a lot of, I think Butler's done a good job of confusing young quarterbacks. I think Malik Washington was just, again, like I spoke glowingly of Malik Washington going into that game, and watching that back was like, I still think the world of Malik Washington after that game against Nebraska. He played phenomenally. But he's not a traditional freshman quarterback. I think you look at Lindsey, and I think you can mix him up a little bit. I think I think Butler's going to have opportunities to bait him into some poor throws just with this guy's pre-snap looks and what he's going to be able to do up front too. Nebraska's going to have an opportunity, I think, to tee off too. I don't think they have to worry about containing. I don't think they have to worry about certain things that they have in weeks past that. I think it's going to allow this pass rush to try and get home without a fear of like, okay, well, I need to make sure I'm not losing, lane responsibility.
Tim, I have to go back to something you said just a second ago when we were talking about recruiting, because it just got the wheels turning. You said that you've seen staffs when they are leaving, they act a certain way and they operate a certain way. What does that look like in your experience when a staff is leaving, just independent of Nebraska? I'm just curious. What does that look like when a staff is leaving? Like, how do they start to act differently?
I mean, it varies, obviously varies just based on communication, but like, again, and I, only saying that just because like, you see staffs where it's like, okay, well, the writing's on the wall. That, like, think of Jimbo Fisher. Like by the end of that, it was like the writing was on the wall. Like you could just see it was like, oh well, they're not really offering. Like they're not really doing their due diligence to address the needs in this cycle. They kind of know that they're pretty much out of here. Like you just weren't seeing a sense of urgency on the trail that you're seeing out of Nebraska, right? Like again, Nebraska saw this happen or saw James Franklin get fired, and the first operation or first odd wasn't like, okay, everyone's scrambling trying to figure out what Rhule's doing. It was, well, okay, we're in eval mode. Let's figure out who we can get from this recruiting class. And then they went and they offered and they started to extend offers and they started to line up visits and moved really quickly. Like Jasir Rogers, the four-star wide receiver, number 1 prospect out of Delaware. Ranked 4.3 at Penn State's camp last year. Broad jumped 11 foot, I believe, and it's just like ridiculously explosive. But that was a Penn State guy all the way. As soon as Nebraska got that opportunity, a bunch of schools offered. Nebraska and Alabama are the only 2 schools that are able to that have gotten official visits on the books for this guy. Like, so there is a sense of urgency in the sense that they're not just getting these guys offers and getting a communication with them. They're setting travel up. They're planning these guys to get on campus in a couple of weeks. And again, I said it on Twitter. How does it make sense for Matt Rhule and his staff to fly in a bunch of kids from the Northeast to a bigger city with a program with the best facilities in the country to then tell them in 2 months to go to a smaller city with worse facilities that is essentially going to be like, you're again recommitting to a staff, and after getting to know this program and getting to see all these people in this different place and understanding that you're not going to be playing, like it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like anyone that thinks that all of these offers was Rhule setting himself up for the next, like, it's just silly. And he's tried, I think, as the best he can to maintain leverage while also just like calming things down because there is like a contingent of people within the fan base and just nationally too that like are just dead set on he's gone. I don't think you should be dead set one way or the other at this point, but I think he's done what he can to kind of calm those people down and keep recruiting on track. Because the worst thing for the staff right now is they don't want this affecting that November 1st recruiting weekend. They're planning on that USC weekend being the biggest recruiting weekend of the year. They don't want rumors of Rhule potentially leaving or any of that like affecting what they can do to finish out this 26 class and set themselves up for a top 5 27 class.
Can you imagine inviting somebody into your house, showing them all your cool stuff, and then saying, "I'm actually moving across town, but I just thought
yeah, just thought you should see this." Yeah, exactly. Like it's like hey, it's like, and that place doesn't have all of this.
Yeah, like this is cool, right? We don't have that over there, but I'm gonna go over there. So, this is cool, but this is not for you.
Right.
Tim, sorry, this is kind of going on in the chat, so I think it's an interesting question. In a perfect world, what is the with Dylan and TJ and Trey, and let's throw Dayton in there as well. Like, what in your mind, if Rhule and Dana Holgorsen have their perfect transition plan, what does that look like from quarterback to quarterback to quarterback?
I think hypothetically the perfect plan is, or the ideal plan of this is next year is it's 3 years and out for Dylan because he's played so well. And then he's off to the draft. And then from there, it's a battle between TJ and it would be freshman year Trey Taylor. I think just that year, that like, and Trey understands too. I think Trey recognizes that he's going to have to potentially sit for a year or two, but he's not going to duck away from the competition, just like TJ didn't duck away from the competition when he enrolled. But I think it would be something like that, where it's like year 1, year 2, it's like okay, it's TJ that sets things up. But I think there's down the line, and again, this is hypothetically projecting. They could both prove me wrong in different ways. I think there is a world where I can see down the line after both of them have a year plus in a college strength and conditioning program under the staff, in the playbook, all of that, where Trey does overall just jump Latif in a talent level and what he can do within the offense. Is that necessarily, again, this is all purely speculation. Does that necessarily mean Nebraska is going to give Trey the job? I don't know. But ideally, it's one more year of Dylan, and then it's TJ for 2 to 3 years, and then it's Trey. Because and Trey recognizes too that I think he's going to like wherever he goes, there's going to be a year of sitting more than likely. I think he's open to that year of sitting. He did it at this high school too. Like he's open to it. He's cool with it. And I think he's a guy that's willing to learn it and wants to give, a staff a chance to develop him and kind of get those snaps in practice and build up to the point to start. So I think the best thing I can say is that everyone, all 3, including Dayton as well, or 4. So all 4 of these guys have an idea of where they stand and what this looks like, and understand that, okay, yeah, like there isn't an expectation of them needing to be ready year 1, and they're all okay with that.
Because, I think about this a lot with like high-level quarterbacks, right? You want them to want to start. You also want them to understand that they shouldn't start, right? Like there has to be some kind of balance of like, yes, starting a true freshman quarterback, usually bad, right? Like it almost never goes as well as you would want it to.
Right. Yeah, like what you exactly, and what you want is a room where everyone knows their role too. Because like I again, it was from a competitor, but credit to him, just for getting the story. Brett Greenberg over at Alabama 247 talked to Keelan Russell's mom after Keelan Russell lost the starting quarterback job to Ty Simpson this summer, and Keelan's mom said Keelan came home and just kind of just half-heartedly said, "Hey, Ty won the job." Like, and it was just kind of like a thing of like, "Hey, if Ty didn't win it, I would have had issues. Like, I would have had questions about what our staff is seeing out there because Ty was clearly the guy, But like, that's important. Like like Alabama right now, everyone knows their role. Ty Simpson knows he's a starter. Austin Mack knows his role as a developmental guy that is just kind of the veteran that is learning the playbook and the backup if they need to. And Keelan recognizes that, okay, hey, I'm the future of this program. I need to keep developing. But there's no incentive and there's no real reason for me to need to be ready in year 1. And honestly, I think for some of those guys, it's a bit of pressure off their back knowing they don't have to be ready year one. Like there was a point where I think Keelan thought he had to be ready year one,
Mhm.
and I think maybe there was a world where, when Trae at one point or another committed was like, oh, maybe I will have to be ready. And then getting to see what TJ did, getting to see kind of be around TJ this summer a little bit and around the QB room, I think recognize, okay, well, I don't need to be ready year one.
That's our guy, Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska. Tim, appreciate the time as always. How do you think the game goes tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nebraska wins. I have them winning and covering. And I there's a world where I could see this. I said this to somebody this week. There's a world where I could see this going like Wisconsin did last year. Not in the sense that I don't think it's going to be that same like score or anything, but I think it's just like Nebraska like is clearly just ahead of this other program. Like it just clearly shows two different levels to the program, specifically in this year. That's not to say anything about, I don't think PJ's about to do what just happened, to get out of the hot seat like Luke Fickle is. Like I do think they've got a really good recruiting class coming up. They've got some really young talent that I think is coming together, and I think Drake Lindsey's just getting started. But this year specifically, I just think Nebraska is the better overall team and has better top end talent, where they have an opportunity to kind of put this game away.
That's Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska. Tim, we appreciate it as always. Enjoy the game tonight.
Sir, appreciate you guys. Have a good weekend.
That's our guy, Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. We'll be right back. But first, got to tell you about our friends at Dingman's Collision Center. Make sure you go check them out if you've got anything you need for auto body repair. Winter's coming up. You got to keep them in mind. Sometimes those cars start sliding around a little bit. Maybe somebody clips you in a parking lot and
That'd be crazy.
Doesn't leave a phone number or anything like